Michelle Theodosi, welcome to Virgin Active Minds. How are you?
I'm very well, Mark. Thanks for having me.
I am stoked to have you here. We are talking about something that is, look, it's a big topic, right? It's a big topic, weight loss goals. It's probably for the modern age, an age old topic. um, and, I was introduced to you by reading this incredible article that you wrote, which really hit home for me. I've been working in the fitness industry since 2009 now, and obviously, especially as a personal trainer over that in those earlier years, this is something that I was working a lot with people, and it can be a really challenging point in people's lives. It's a challenging point, I'm sure, for some listeners listening right now. So yeah, the article that you wrote was really refreshing, I feel, and yeah, I'm just really excited to have you here to talk about that. Um,
I'm glad to be here.
the first question I have is around obesity. It's in most countries in the world, it is a big problem. We have more than ever in the history of humanity have we've never had so much information, right? Like we've got literally all of the information in our phones right now on how to work with body weight and weight loss, but we aren't, right? Like it's still a huge problem. What do you think? Why are we seeing that problem? What is the issue?
Yeah, so this is a really broad question, right? And that's because weight management is a really complex and multifactorial issue. There's a lot of different variables and parts that really impact on weight and weight management. And you're right in saying, spot on. If it was just information, if it was just knowing what to do and having access to information, we wouldn't see, you know, the rates of rate we regain that we do see. Um, so I think a really exciting point that we're going to hopefully get into a little bit more detail today around is why. Why do we see such high rates of failure? Where are we going wrong? What are we not considering, or what are we approaching from the wrong angle? And yeah, what sort of keeps us stuck in this pattern that we see time and time again of this attempted weight loss followed by weight regain.
Mm. Look, let's dive straight into that, straight up. I'm sure that there's many listeners right now that have had weight loss goals, potentially on a goal right now, or aiming for a goal right now. Why does this often end in failure if we're, just having this one single body weight loss goal?
Yeah. So setting a goal around weight is really setting ourselves up for failure. So it's actually looking at the goals we're setting and looking at what that is potentially doing in terms of how it will affect our motivation, sustainability, and ultimately how we feel in ourselves along that journey. And there's been some research into this, and some wonderful researchers have coined this false hope syndrome that occurs when we set weight loss goals or goals solely based around weight. Um, and I can't really talk about weight loss goals without talking about the scales, because typically this is the tool we use to measure the progress. Scales measure weight, and if we're setting a goal around weight, they're often going hand in hand. And there's sort of four fundamental flaws that we go into weight loss goals with very often. And these flaws, as we'll come to see, they're sold to us. We're constantly taught, we hear, we read these things, so we come to believe them, but they're fundamentally false. And the first one is the amount of weight we set out to lose is often overestimated. The
Mm.
speed in which we'll lose it is often underestimated. So here we're starting our goal with setting a goal that we're going to lose an over estimated amount in an underestimated time frame. And again, the weight loss industry sells this to us, 12-week programs, 8-week challenges with these results that we see that aren't realistic, not physiologically possible, or only for the very small outliers. The fourth one is the third one, sorry, is the ease in which uh, weight loss is attainable, right? So we're expecting to lose a lot in a short amount of time with relative ease. And again, this is, I guess, the weight loss industry's other great selling point is, you get these results in this short amount of space of time, and all you have to do is, download this ebook, right? Like that's it. Um,
Mm.
so we're going in with this sort of overinflated idea that it's going to all come quickly and it's going to be relatively easy. And then that fourth flaw is that we expect the benefits to be beyond what is reasonable. It's not just I'll lose weight, it's I'll get happier and healthier, be more successful, get that dream job, that dream relationship. We often tie a lot to weight loss, um, and it's often becoming this sort of gatekeeper that we need to achieve in order to achieve all these other things. Now, the challenge with these flaws is, if you can imagine, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have been through this cycle where they start out with this hope, and it's often very motivating at the start, and we start some new program or challenge, or we just decide, come Monday, I'm going to start cooking more, drinking more water, and exercising more regularly, maybe sign up to an exercise class. And initially, we may start to see some early results, right? And this reinforces everything we've been told. The program's working initially, we may even see some early weight loss, and there's some physiological reasons around that. But ultimately, this doesn't continue in a really linear way. Weight loss eventually will slow, sometimes stop, even go up, despite us still putting in the same effort, right? And when you're a personal trainer, you may have even heard your clients go up, I've done the same thing this week, right?
Mm.
And very often they're telling the truth, but
Mm-hmm.
the body isn't this robotic machine that gets the same results each week. And because we've set out with this expectation, these false hopes that it should keep coming off as quickly as it started, and we should be feeling all these benefits, and it should be easy, we ultimately run into this point, this tipping point where the consequences, the challenges are outweighing the benefits we're seeing. And this is where motivation, if it's only tied to weight loss in the scales, it plummets, right?
Mm.
This is often where we abandon our efforts. That sort of, what's the point? I'm putting in all this effort. I'm not getting that one result, that one progress measure on the scales that I'm tying everything to. And there's nothing else I'm really doing this for. So we abandon. Feel like a failure. Often we internalize that. We don't think maybe the goal was set too high, or maybe this program doesn't actually work. Maybe I've been sold a bit of a lie. We internalize it, feel like a failure, knocks at our self confidence, knocks at our self esteem. But it's a cycle. So eventually that wears off and we get sold the next great thing. And because
Mm.
it wasn't the program that failed us, it was us that failed the program, we jump into the next one. So
Mm.
this is sort of part of what you can see, this sort of cycle that we can get stuck into when we set a weight loss goal. And when we set ourselves up in that way, that ultimately is going to leave us self-sabotaging or feeling like a failure.
Mm. And it's, I mean, for some listeners now, like this is going to be new news, right? Like they're going to be thinking, but we've always been told that this is the way to do it. We saw in some countries, the TV show The Biggest Loser, which was basically all of these flaws that you were talking about in a big grand TV show, and sponsored by these health and well-being companies. And, so it's no surprise that people out there are thinking that, these flaws that you're talking about have been sold as actually the solution. And I think the other thing that kind of came up for me as I was listening to you speaking is that, being stuck in this cycle, and often, and especially from the experience I had as a personal trainer, often, there's so much stigma around weight, body weight, and I guess the attempt at weight loss, that even when something does fail, not only are we setting people up to fail with these flaws, but they often, because of the stigma, don't feel like they can talk to anyone, because it's
Mm.
almost shameful. So there's, and we know that as social beings, right? Like, we do our best work when we're working with others and we're working with people and we're sharing our trials and tribulations. But I think also, too, there's this barrier that people, they don't want to, it's almost like they're trying to do something in secret, and not really wanting to share.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I guess you can see a lot of ways in which that can feed into how we then move further away from being our happiest, healthiest self if we are sort of closing inwards and holding those emotions, like you said, those feelings of guilt and shame and a sense of failure, which really knocks at self-esteem. It 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 really takes away from that drive and of self-care
Mm,
and all of the really positive health behaviors that are aligned with feeling your best.
mm. And most likely perpetuates the negative health um, practices, habits, that we should probably
Yeah.
be working on changing. Um, in regards to change, can you talk to us about the diet mindset and health mindset?
Yeah. So this really ties into, I guess, what we were discussing around weight, around the scales. It's a really great example of, I guess, approaching something with this diet mindset. So a diet mindset ultimately is making choices around food that are solely dependent on how that's going to affect your body weight. So essentially focusing on like rigid rules and what not to have, often focused around taking things out and restriction or limiting how much you eat or the times that you eat. A diet mindset is often around sort of food just being the sum of its calories very often. And there's certain tools that are often utilized in this diet mindset, like calorie counting apps. And it really promotes a very black and white, all or nothing view around food. Using a calorie counting app as an example of that, as you may be familiar with, they often give you this target in a day. And again, it's the same target every day, not considering the fact that our body doesn't work like that. It doesn't need the exact same amount every day. It also refreshes at midnight, again, not considering the fact that we're not this robotic machine and at midnight something magic happens and everything refreshes. But it's also this fixed number that is so black and white that if you go 1 calorie over what they've told you need in a day, it'll turn red. And it
Mm,
is this promotion of really externalizing and giving the power externally to what your body needs. And what we know is when we are in a diet mindset, it completely removes our ability to tune in intuitively to things like our hunger and fullness cues. So, a diet mindset is very often associated with restrict and binge cycles. So, we don't listen to hunger, so we're restricting, and it's sort of like holding your breath. You can only do that for so long, and anybody who's been on a diet may resonate with this. Ultimately, you've got to take a breath, but you don't just go back to breathing normally when you've held back and not listened to hunger. There's a period of overcompensation, like gasping for air, right? And this can promote overeating, right? And there's a physiological element to this alongside a psychological element. But the physiological element is repeated dieting can really turn down those hunger cues. So ghrelin, which naturally our body has to tell us when it's time to eat, But whilst it turns down that hunger hormone, it's also turning down our fullness hormone, that one that tells us when we're starting to feel satisfied, leptin, right? So we're now broadening this swing, sort of like a pendulum,
Mm,
right? So this diet mindset, it's very much associated with over longer periods of time, lower mood, actually lower health outcomes. As I said, this higher tendency for binge eating, and actually in the long term, weight regain, and overall weight gain. So it doesn't quite work, right? We know this now. We have a lot of research around this. 95% of all diets will lead to weight regain. But the diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we don't often hear this messaging often. It's often not the primary messaging we hear, but there is solid research to back it up. We can't stay in this diet mindset and reach sustainable health goals in the long term. So there needs to be a bit of a shift. And as you said, a nice way of putting that is a health mindset, right? So rather than focusing on restriction and what to take out, a health mindset is focusing on what does my body need more of and why, right? So abundance, right? If you think about I guess, sort of like thinking about a toddler, if you put them in a room with all these toys and you say, okay, you can play with any of these toys, but you can't play with this one, right? That's like a diet mindset. You're focusing on what you can't have. What's a toddler going to do instantly?
mm-hmm.
All they're thinking about is this one toy. Ultimately, they're going to play with the toy. And when they do, they feel guilty and shameful. But an abundance mindset is going, all the toys are free to play with, right? And yeah, there might be some toys there that, might zap their finger and hurt them momentarily, or may not be as good for them. But they're free to play with them all and they'll figure it out. Some are really fun and feel good to play with, and others not so much. But there's no moral value tied to any of these toys or foods. So ultimately, they're able to make choices that align with what leaves them feeling their best. So focusing more on health does lead to greater overall life satisfaction, health, improved mood. And we don't see this sort of, it's often called a Nike swoosh effect, which is that weight loss initially followed by weight gain. We don't see that when we're
Mm,
focusing on health. So I guess an example I can give around food of focusing on a health mindset, and abundance and adding things in would be, say, something like extra virgin olive oil. A diet mindset, if you're using a calorie counting app, it's quite an energy dense food, right? It's got quite a bit of calories for a very small volume. And in a diet mindset, you might be limiting or even cutting out these sorts of things like dressings on your salad or roasting vegetables or using it in cooking. A health mindset would say, add this as you choose. It's an excellent source of antioxidants and healthy fats, but it's also going to make your food really delicious and enjoyable. You're likely to feel more satisfied. You're actually
mm,
going to feel fuller for longer, because that's what fat does with digestion. You're going to get more of everything that you're putting the olive oil on, because it helps you draw out fat soluble vitamins, right? So you're getting more nutrition. And it's likely going to leave you not as at risk of, say, snacking or grazing straight after a meal, or instantly feeling like something sweet after a meal, because you've genuinely enjoyed it, right? So this is an example of thinking about food as more than just the sum of its calories, thinking about it in terms of, what does it do for me? Do I enjoy it? Does it add flavor, variety, satisfaction, and not demonizing it? Yeah.
I mean, that it's just such a beautiful way to look at this, and I'm sure you've explained that so beautifully. I'm sure that there's no one out there that can't see the benefit of that, right? Like, and the reality of it. It's probably switched a few minds just listening to that 5-minute piece. But I must say, like, I was that trainer for a while back then. I was the calorie guy. I remember handing out those books, and it never crossed my mind as a young inexperienced trainer that what that does to someone's mind when they're thinking about food, as you so beautifully put, with the example of olive oil, it's kind of seeing food purely as a calorie number and not as what it could do for us. And whether that's, introducing some beautiful nutrients, but also, making something taste better. So, and something that will help you to feel more satisfied with what you're eating, and therefore potentially, being more mindful of how much you're eating. And it's just it's a complete shift, this health mindset on diet culture. But it's, again, as you said, it's this diet industry is so big and so powerful. Like, it's so clearly smothering information like what you're putting out there, which is what we're listening to right now, which is just such a shame, right? Like, it's no fault of anyone to think that, these flaws around diet culture are the reality. That if you're listening to this now, like, that's not your fault. Like, that's all of the info that's out there. That's what's popping up on our feeds. That's what's often, being touted on breakfast television. But I think, if we can have a look at this health mindset and really, shift our way of thinking from a place of lack and fear and this kind of almost ugly relationship with food, to what you beautifully said, this place of abundance, like, what are all the good things that I could be adding, and I think once we start to kind of, I guess, in a way with exercise, like, once you start to get into it and you're adding a little bit more and you're doing a little bit more on Saturday, and then slowly with time, right, it starts to become the norm, and you start to really feel and appreciate the benefits that come with that. Um, in regards to time, like, is this kind of a, because that is a big flaw that diet culture promotes. We can do this in a very short amount of time. Um, Potentially, I'm answering this question myself, but we've got to see this as a lifelong thing, right? It's like, I say this with yoga, like, there's no goal with yoga, right? Or there's no goal when I'm teaching a Pilates class. Like, this is actually something we want to implement for the rest of our lives. Like, this is a lifelong practice, not necessarily a 6-week goal, right?
Yeah, you put that so well. I often hear myself saying to my clients, like, we want to start this the way that you want to keep going with it. We're not
Mm,
doing something for a short period of time to then stop doing it. And that essentially is a diet. You go on a diet with the intention to come off a diet, which,
mm,
no surprise why these things aren't sustainable. Whereas this very much is, it's a lifestyle change. It's making changes, like you said, that really fit into what you enjoy. Not just when it comes to food, but also the practicalities. Who else is at home? How much time do you have? What do you have access to? What resources do you have? Right, and starting there. There's not just one way. I think this is what I love so much about still, being so connected with clients on a one-on-one in a one-on-one fashion in clinic is uh, just the way in which every single person has their own unique way of doing things that really works for them. Um, and that, I guess, brings in, if we think about health, it's more than just physical health as well. It's their well psychological well-being, it's their social
mm.
health, it's their emotional health. And if you're eating in a way that's in alignment with that, well, yeah, you're going to say yes to catching up with friends for brunch because there's no rigid rules or plan that you're on. And you're going to take that opportunity to engage in other healthful behaviors like moving your body because it feels really good, and you're not punishing your body just by telling yourself you have to do some sort of rigid exercise. You're exploring what actually feels good and you enjoy. So it can go even beyond diet in the way that we think about health by, again, focusing less on punishment, restriction, what do I need to take out, to what feels good, what do I need more of, what can I
Mm.
sort of bring in and fill up this space.
Mm. And I guess, we got to acknowledge also that, even it's, of course, we're sitting here, we're part of this industry, we do get excited about this, but I guess we do need to also acknowledge, though, this change in mindset and change in practices on a daily basis can still be difficult, right? Like, again, you mentioned one of the flaws of diet culture is that, they say that everything's very easy, but it can still be challenging making the right decisions and making change and a change in mindset. And that's why I think, also part of why I brought up, the whole social aspect and the stigma around that. And as you just beautifully mentioned, like, it's kind of, we start to consider our social resources and being able to ask for help and trying to break down that stigma. So, if things are feeling difficult, firstly, yes, like, acknowledge that, absolutely, that it can be challenging. Um, but don't forget, we've got beautiful people like Michelle Theodosi right now that are out there trying to help people find their own way as well, right? Because, again, you also just said it is a bit of an individual path. Like, there is no one
Mm.
health mindset that potentially fits all. And then, though that path can sometimes be a bit tricky to navigate, but of course that's why there are people doing the good work like yourself to help clients and to help people navigate that path.
Yeah, that's such an important point to keep reinforcing. We don't hold the same resistance or shame for seeking help for, getting our car fixed. We go to a mechanic.
Mm,
I would never attempt that
mm-hmm,
myself, or, other supports that we need. We have, coaches on sports teams, we have teachers at schools, we have these incredible resources that get us to where we want to be. In a supported way, but also drawing from their experience and their expertise. So when it comes to shifting that mindset. There's nobody better suited than somebody that's trained in this space, whether it's a psychologist or a dietitian with a background in, say, health coaching and behavior change, and then seeking support around movement. You don't have to navigate that alone. There are wonderful people out there that can really support you in finding what works for you. A lot of it comes from within, and that sort of internal sort of uh, exploration is really key. But
mm-hmm,
that's what a really great coach will do. They'll encourage you and they'll prompt you with the right questions to do that internal exploration yourself. And then there'll be that cheerleader to just continue to remind you of what you've already shared is important to you and why that's so important to you, so you can keep moving in that direction.
mm. That internal discovery, navigation journey, and also, in particular around behavior change. Can you talk to us a little bit about, why finding our own why can be so beneficial on this journey?
Yeah. Why finding our own why is so beneficial. I love that. Yeah. So, just as you touched on, if we only have these external motivators, the number on the scales, the doctor who's given us this goal, and it's all external and it's all been told to us, or we've sort of absorbed it and taken it on as something we think we should do. It's going to fizzle out quite quickly. Whereas taking some time to really sit with, say if weight loss is a goal for you, actually asking yourself, why? What do I feel will be different for me at a lower weight? What do I feel is sort of behind this door of weight loss that I'm wanting to get to, but I'm sort of seeing this as a block, as this sort of gatekeeper before I can get there? Is it um, wanting to have better energy? Is it wanting to be able to be more actively and engaged with my kids? Is it that I'm wanting to be more social and engage more? Is it I'm wanting to feel more comfortable and confident in my clothes? What is it, right? Um, and then connecting that to what's actually important to you, right? And this can come down to what you value, what's aligned with what's meaningful and valuable to you, and and these are often constant. These are often things that sort of make up who we are as a person, and if we can really connect to that, this doesn't change. This doesn't fizzle out if the scales don't go down. This is continuing to guide and drive us. This sort of more internal or intrinsically motivating push to do something because it's in alignment with what really matters, why it's so important to us, and then we can cut the I guess that middleman out of weight loss needing to be achieved first before we can feel happier and healthier and more confident and more active and have better energy, and we can actually just work directly on what's the behavior, what's the change that directly links me to that right now? What do I need to start doing to start feeling closer to what's really important to me? And that's, I guess, a really good place to begin when thinking about setting um, these meaningful goals that are more linked to the process rather than just the destination.
Mm. And is that the best way that we can start that? Is purely, sit here right now, wherever you're listening, and ask, like, what is that behind this, I think you said, behind this weight loss door? Like, what is it? Why do I want to be there? Why, how is that going to change? How is that going to change my life or the way I think about myself or the way I connect with family? All these important things in life. Is it as, maybe I shouldn't say simple, but is it as clear as just sitting down and asking yourself why?
Very often I'll in session when somebody comes in, if they have this really simplistic goal of, I just want to lose weight, I'll often break it down, and I'll start by asking them first, um, how how important is it for them? Um, so even before understanding sort of why it's important or what that's connected to, actually seeing where it's sitting, because it doesn't always actually sit highly for people despite feeling like it should. Um,
Mm,
so actually coming back to, is this actually something that is really important to me right now? And this can change over time and for different reasons. Um, but if it's, say, I often it's something called a change ruler. We often go from 1 to 10. Where would you be sitting? And they might say, okay, I'm sitting at a 7. Right? And this is a really good opportunity to now look at both sides. Okay, you didn't say a 5 or a 6, so what's driving that up? Why is this so important? Right? And start to draw out that information. But you've now also got that little gap that they haven't put themselves at a 10.
mm,
And you can start to explore some of the barriers, some of the hesitation, some of the resistance, some of the fears or doubts, or their own, often drawn from their own experience, what's happened in the past. Um, all of this information can be really important in understanding what works and doesn't work for you. Like you said, those drivers and motivators, but also those barriers and blockers. And that's another really good place to start when exploring this, is draw from your own experience. Don't disregard that's unique to you, but that's also pieces of the puzzle that are
mm-hmm,
really, really insightful, that are going to give you a really good foundation to then continue to grow from.
mm. Yeah, look, it kind of touches on something, with, I was doing regular personal training for around about 5 or 6 years, and, um, before taking on some leadership roles within Virgin Active, and especially as I started to explore this myself with clients, and working on the why and you know discovering these deeper motivations that weren't often on the surface level, and sometimes, not always, but also sometimes weren't necessarily correlating with just weight loss. It was so beautiful to see, especially we're talking about this health mindset that you know often someone's motivations to maintain change, whether that be a certain body weight or whether it be the way they ate or the way that they exercised, the motivations changed dramatically, right? Like it was, almost like we were talking about weight loss for a certain period, but sometimes quickly it became about something completely different that that the client just had no idea was kind of almost sitting there waiting for them. um, Things like, oh my God, now I enjoy going for a jog on the weekend with a running group, or I just feel better when I'm playing with my kids, or I'm able to focus at work more. And it was incredible to see that, these things, especially as we're sitting here now talking about health mindset, these things became um, a much more bigger and important and fruitful reason for these changes in mindset and changes in daily life. So I hope that maybe that message can um, not necessarily inspire, but maybe just take away some of the pressure. Some of that pressure that we often feel around. I'm here for weight loss. I've got to lose weight.
Mm, yeah. And to that point, I think it's really important to recognize that often a reason that weight loss becomes that initial primary goal is because it is so tangible, it's so measurable, which makes it feel really real. These other goals, like I just want to have more energy or feel better, can be really sort of fluffy. So a
Mm,
key part of I guess moving forward in a health mindset is finding ways to make these broader health goals really tangible, like make them and set them up in a way that they are quantifiable. You can actually measure change over time. If you're setting them up as goals, you may be familiar with, SMART goals. Make them really specific. Make sure you can measure them. Make sure that they're often action focused and you can keep yourself accountable and realistic. I guess coming back to not having that false hope, but realistic and time bound. And when we do this, um, it gives them the same sort of pull and power as often we're drawn to with a weight goal and seeing a number.
mm. Michelle, for the listener right now, what would be your final intention for them today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I guess I'm hoping from hearing this and anybody who's clicked on this particular podcast to listen to, I'm hoping maybe was already sitting a little bit on the fence of doubt of this sort of diet lie and was looking for a change. So I guess my intention is doing things differently. Make that next step that you take not just a rebranded version of the step that you've always taken. Um, do things
Mm,
differently and go into it with curiosity because it is new, but also a lot of self compassion. It's not linear. There's no black and white answers, which again is often why this isn't the most attractive path. But if the other path isn't working, it doesn't work, and it's never going to work. It's time for something different. So I guess the intention is give yourself permission to just get curious with compassion, and maybe seek that support. I think that was a really nice message
mm,
as well. It's okay to not just feel like you need to do this all alone. Reach out to a professional who specializes in this space, or buddy up with a friend who's also had a similar journey and wants to do things differently and support each other.
curiosity, self compassion, and it's okay to ask for help. That is a beautiful, beautiful message. Thank you so much. Michelle, where can people find you? If they are right now wanting to reach out and ask for some help, how would they connect with you?
Yeah, so I work with a wonderful team at the Lifestyle Dietitian. We are a nutrition and dietetic health business. We're based in Sydney. We've got 12 clinic locations, but we're also available online. So you can work with us one on one. But we also do have some wonderful resources online, and often we'll hold workshops and support in other ways. So the best place to find us is at our website. So if you Google the Lifestyle Dietitian, you'll find us there. Or on social media, so predominantly Instagram. So again, the Lifestyle Dietitian _AU, and you'll be able to find and connect with us there.
Beautiful. Guys, we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes as well, so you can check out the show notes after the show. Michelle, it has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. So refreshing, so compassionate, and a beautiful message for all of us out there. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming to chat to us at Virgin Active Minds.
Thanks, Mark, and I appreciate you asking some great questions and initiating this really important conversation.
Thanks, Michelle.